Hey everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. Welcome to the dramatic conclusion here of our Economic and Personal Finance unit on money management. So today we're going to talk about the different types of ways of spending money. Credit cards, debit cards, cash, payment apps. That's what we're going to talk about today, so let's just go ahead and get into it. So we're going to start today talking about, and again, today is about the different ways of spending your money. What are your other options? So let's start today talking about cash, which is, I figure is something that you should know what it is and know how it works. So money represents. Anyway, we're going to get too much into the deep thoughts there. Let's keep it basic. Cash. If you have bills, can you pay them with cash? Sure. All right. There are advantages and disadvantages of cash, however. The advantage is that it's immediate payment is possible. All right. That is a, one of the, it's guaranteed. It's, I should say secretive, but it's private, so there's no recorded, unless you have a receipt, there is no record of exactly what you are spending your money on. So if you're trying to be more private with it, there's no bank account recording of it. There'll be a bank account recording that you took the money out, but not what you spent it on. So if you're trying to buy your mother a beautiful present and you don't want her to find out about it, like she would have, or your spouse. I should say spouse. So they had access to your account and you just took the money out to go buy them something nice, then they wouldn't know what you spent the money on. It's also generally accepted, meaning that if you've never looked real closely at the money, it all says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. It, in theory, is accepted everywhere. So like when you go to a restaurant or like a fast food restaurant, they're like, sorry, we don't accept money over $50. Like we don't accept bills over 20, meaning they don't accept $50 bills. Technically, if you want to go argue with it, and you shouldn't, just don't carry around 50s. They kind of have to take a 50 because it's insured by the government, so they can't say no. In theory, that's just, don't say, Mr. Wax, I told you to go argue over that. If it's legal tender, that you're supposed to be able to use it, but obviously the reason they do that is they are trying to not have a bunch of cash on hand, so it's less likely to get robbed, or people trying to use counterfeit money, and people have seen 50s enough to really know what to look for counterfeit. There's a whole bunch of logical reasons why they say that. So shouldn't even put that in your mind. But you can spend cash money pretty much everywhere, all right? It's very straightforward. One of the biggest downsides to using cash, however, is it's not secure. If somebody comes and steals your money, some crook with his, the little eye bandanas, they buy those at the crook store. Some steals your money and runs off with it. Unless they catch him with the money, your money's gone. There's nothing that connects your money to you. That's what banks are for. So while money is generally untraceable, that has pros and cons with it. If you lose it, you steal it, it gets set on fire, whatever, that money's just gone and you're not getting it back. There is no insurance policy for destroyed money. So the question here is, what are some of the positives and negatives of using cash for purchases? Can't talk today. So pause me, answer that completely. We're moving on. All right, let's talk about debit cards and the pros and cons of using debit cards. So if you have a checking account, which most people do or will, all right, a checking account is called that because you have money set aside in a bank account. In order to get to that money, it used to be you write a check and then you give it to the grocery store or whatever. They give you your groceries, they go deposit that check, takes a couple days, it comes out of your bank, goes into the grocery store's bank, everything's good. We have really sped that process up with the creation of debit cards, which literally is just the instant version of a check. So you probably don't use checks real often unless your grandma sends you a check for your birthday. So checks are not used very commonly anymore. They are still used, and it's going to be necessary to have some checks because there's some things that you're going to have to pay with check most likely in your life, even though I can imagine at some point in your lifetime, if not in my lifetime, the checks will just cease to be used altogether. Anywho, debit card has just replaced a check. Now, if you have a debit card, it probably looks something like this. Say you have, you bank at Wells Fargo. They give you a debit card. It is probably going to say Visa or like MasterCard in the bottom right corner. Those are credit card companies. That does not mean it is a credit card. They are connected with Visa and MasterCard. They use a lot of Visa and MasterCard for their security purposes and stuff. But if it's a debit card, that means when you swipe it and spend money, it's coming out of your account right then. All right. A credit card, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that is using somebody else's money, and then they send you a bill at the end of the month for all of their money that you spent, and you have to pay it then. A credit card, when you're swiping, it doesn't come out of your account. It's just your recurring debt for that month that you have to pay off at the end of the month. And we're going to talk about that. Even though that's Visa and MasterCard too, and just because you have Visa or MasterCard on your debit card doesn't necessarily mean it is a credit card. All right? It is a debit card, and it connects directly to your checking account. So it's very secure. It's very quick. You're not going to have all the lot of the dangers associated with credit cards as far as getting in this interest rate and cycle of debt. However, there are absolutely some downsides to having a debit card, even though it's instant access to your own money and used most everywhere that can, that has a card reader. And some of those fees are, some of the downsides using a debit card that can't happen with cash, is you get overdraft fees. So overdraft fees, say you got $17 in your bank account, in your checking account, and you swipe your card for $20 at some merchant. You buy something for $20. Most of the time, depending on how your bank is set up, they're going to let you buy it. Cool. So now you have negative $3 in your account. But here's the problem. When you go past zero into the negatives, they can charge you like $40. So instead of having negative $3, it's actually negative $43. So you got a $40 penalty for going over. Like, I'm going more into debt. You're absolutely right. And you owe them that money. So those are overdraft fees. Even worse is extended overdraft fees. This can happen when you're not keeping up with how much money is in your account. It's always online, even though we're not balancing checkbooks. This is the equivalent of not balancing your checkbook. If you go over and say you don't spend your money, you don't swipe a card again for days on end, your bank could say, hey, for every day that you're in the negatives, we're going to charge you an additional $40. That is extended overdraft fees, where they continuously charge you a fee for being under $0. And so the next time you check, you owe them, you thought you had $17. All right. You thought, you had the money to buy whatever it is, but it was $20. You check a few days later and you owe them $160. That is extended overdraft fees. Now, the banks are nice, and I'll put that in quotes. They know people don't want that to happen. That's called overdrafting, and overdraft fees and extended overdraft fees. So a lot of times banks, to be nice, they will provide you with something called overdraft protection. Keeps this from happening to you. What that means is if you overdraft, right, they will take money from your savings account to put directly into your checking account, so you're not charged that $40 fee. Oh, how nice of them. They're only going to charge you $5 to do that every time it happens. So they are literally charging you a fee to move your money back into your money. So overdraft protection is better than paying overdraft fees, especially better than extended overdraft fees, but they all cost a fee. The rule to learn here, kids, don't spend more money than you have. That's honestly, don't spend more money than you have is basically the basis of this entire course. But overdraft protection, a lot of times banks will do this. I believe I have mine set up because I didn't want this to happen forever ago whenever I set it up. I've had the same one forever. I think I have mine set up where it was like, if I swipe it and I don't have the money, then don't let the transaction go through. Like, if I tried to buy something for $20 and I had 17 minutes, swipe it, have them tell me, no, don't do it. And you have to sign like a bunch of paperwork for that, basically because they don't want you to be stuck somewhere in the middle of nowhere and you bought gas and then you can't pay for it, and then, I don't know, make you wash dishes or scrub windshields to pay for it. Anywho, so what are some positives and negatives of using a debit card for purchases? So pause me, answer that completely. We're moving on. All right, so you guys are probably most used to using this, I would imagine. This is a new thing, and I would imagine this is going to be somewhat of the way forward. All right, so this is being recorded in 2023. So I'm probably going to date myself by talking about anything technology related, all right? But let's go ahead and do it. Present day, these are the 3 biggest payment apps in the world in 2023. Have a good chuckle at me if you're watching this in 20 years and you're like, oh, I remember old-fashioned PayPal. So Venmo, PayPal, the Cash App. So these are apps on your phone. You can connect them to your bank account. All right. The benefit to this, to like Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, is if you want to send your friend Billy money, you can just use an app to do that. As long as y'all both have an app, you both have it set up, and it's both connected to your accounts, you can send something from your checking account to Billy, and it connects to his bank account. You can do it right there on your phone. This is great. You go out to eat and somebody's like, I'll get the tab. That way the waitress doesn't have to divide this up in 5 different sections. And y'all all just Venmo me or Cash App me or send me money in PayPal. And there's a million different apps. You just send it to me that way and it'll be fine. And that way you can just send people money. And it's very similar to like cash, of handing cash over. It feels like that level of simplicity. I should also take this time to point out, what do these companies get out of this? If you don't think about that, you should start. Generally speaking, people don't do things for fun and free. If it's taxes and it's the government entity, that is what is designed to spend the tax money for the betterment of the people. These are private companies. What's the catch, Mr. Wagstaff? So the way they make money is pretty interesting. So when somebody pays you, like on Venmo, and I'll use them as an example. Somebody pays you on Venmo, it can sit in your account or you can transfer it to your bank, all right? So if you go to transfer it from your account into your bank, you get a couple options. And this is, again, as 2023, rules change all the time. Basically like, hey, do you want that money right now in your bank? I'll give it to you right now, but it's a 1% fee. That's how Venmo would make money. Or if you're cool with waiting like 1 to 3 business days to get this in your account, then there's no fee. So, like here for $35 at one, it's 35 cents. Do you want the money right now or do you want to wait 1 to 3 days to get it and it's no fee? Another reason Venmo does this is because that $35 doesn't sit in no man's land if you're waiting on it for 1 to 3 days. It gets put into a huge amount of money that everybody that's paying through Venmo, it sits there. And since Venmo always has this huge amount of money that people buy, like waiting a couple days, that they are making interest off of other people's money, and that's how Venmo makes money. So these are free to use, and they're very effective, and they're making their money off of it through interest, and it really doesn't cost the consumer any money unless you need your money instantaneously. One of the other really big positives of cash apps is their fraud protection. So this was the biggest concern when it came out and why people were hesitant to use it. Like, I'm not telling some random company, like all my bank information, have them have access to it. People will steal my money all the time. That was a legit concern, all right? So what these companies did is they went above and beyond to make sure all of their stuff is secure, everything is insured, and in theory, if somebody tries to steal money from you, do something shady, or you give somebody, you pay for something that's, worthless, there's all these things in play that these companies should be able to prevent you from getting scammed or have your money stolen from you, like if it was cash. So they kind of overcompensated for this, and because of that, these cash apps have very good fraud protection for the most part. I'm sure very easily as I'm saying this, there's some event that happens after I'm recording this that everybody's like, look how dumb Mr. Wagstaff is, and the great money steal from Cash App of 2027. I don't know. But with the information we have right now, the fraud protection is really good with cash apps. One of the downsides to it, though, is this is not accepted everywhere. At least present day, it's not. It's good for buying stuff online. It's good for giving money back and forth between people. But if you go to the gas station and try to Venmo them money to pay for gas, probably not going to work. At least present day, it doesn't. So a lot of times people still accept cash, credit cards, and debit cards, but using cash apps at merchants still is not super common. So the question here is, what are some of the positives and negatives of using payment app for purchases? So pause me, answer that completely, and we're moving on. All right, so let's talk about credit cards. Next unit, we're going to talk about credit and debt, and we're going to hit on credit cards again quite a bit. But I want to, once again, give you some background on what a credit card is, specifically how it's different than a debit card. So let's start here. MasterCard, Discover, American Express, Visa. These are the most famous and well-known credit card companies. All right. So while they also work with banks to provide the debit cards and give some security because they know how to do the cards and the banks don't, that is different. If it's a debit card, it's a debit card. If it's a credit card, it's a credit card. And I know you use your debit card somewhere and it's like, do you want to use credit or debit? And you can use either one. I'm not getting into that right now because that's just going to confuse everybody. But credit cards are credit cards. If you have a credit card, it is in no way connected to your bank account. When you swipe a credit card, you are not spending your money. If you have a MasterCard and you swipe a MasterCard and you buy something for $100, you are not spending your money. You're spending MasterCard's money. All right, and all the expenses that you use all month, that you have occurred all month, at the end of the month, MasterCard sends you a bill for the total amount of money that you have spent of their money they want you to pay back. Now, if you pay it back that month, it's like it's free. Obviously, you still have to pay the money, but there's no extra fees associated with it if you pay it back that month. Not only that, if you pay it back that month, not only are there no fees or anything associated with it, they'll start giving you stuff. They'll start giving you extra discounts to stuff. They'll start giving you free airline miles. They will start giving you extra stuff because they want you to use their credit card, even though it appears they're not making any money off of you. So if you can pay it off every month on time, there are benefits to a credit card. It's a little bit like playing with fire. So some of the big pros of this is it builds your credit history. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit next unit. Access to emergency funds. So if you're out of money, you absolutely have to you're out of money. It's 2 days before payday. You blew a tire and you have to have that tire to get to work. Credit cards for emergencies are necessary. So there's some flexibility to pay over time, even though you're going to get a huge interest rate on it. A lot of benefits to credit cards. The downsides, though, can get pretty steep pretty quickly. You have a temptation to overspend. Since you're swiping it and your bank account is not going down, you can just keep swiping that card, buy whatever you want. Hey, nothing's coming out of my bank account. But then you get this bill at the end of the month, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't pay it. So sometimes people view credit cards like fun money, which you should not, because it's real money that you have to pay back. They have very high interest rates, like 20+% interest rates. So the reason credit cards give these benefits to people that pay everything on time is because they are making tons of money. Credit cards make money out of people getting behind on their payments. Understand that. How do credit cards make money? By people that are late on their payments. It's not in the credit card's best interest for everybody to be financially responsible. They need people to be late on their payments so that they can get all their extra money that they're making in interest. So while they offer you all this nice stuff, that's basically to get you in to use their credit card. And sometimes it feels like they're secretly hoping you get behind on your payments because that's how they make money. And when you get behind on your payments and you get overwhelmed in your payments, they're not really there to help you get out of that, because you being in debt benefits them because you're having to pay them extra money back for the money that you spent. So the question here is, what are some positives and negatives of using a credit card for purchases? So pause me, answer that completely, and we're moving on. So I wanted to spend a little bit here at the very end and specifically talk about fees associated with credit cards. This is in addition to those interest rates that are wildly high. Here are extra fees. Now, before we jump into it, I want to explain something. If you pay your credit card off the month you spent the money, you don't deal with any of this. Generally speaking, you don't deal with any of this. This is when you get behind. This is where that cycle of debt comes in. There's these fees, there's these interest rates. Credit cards don't want you to get out of debt because that's how they make money. However, if you can use the credit cards responsibly and pay it off every month, there are quite a few benefits. Helps your credit score, which is wildly important in today's society, and we will talk about that next unit. So here's getting that cycle of debt, that spiral. Let's get into it. All right. So one of the very first things that we need to talk about, all right, is late payment fees. All right. So say you owe $271. They're going to give you the option. Hey, you can pay this $271, or if you just pay $20, we'll just let it ride until next month. Gee, why would they be so nice? Well, you know what's going to happen next month? That $271 is a 25% interest rate tacked onto it. And that $271 is going to be a lot more the following month. But if you pay that $20, that means you're acknowledging it, you're understanding, and you can move forward. If you don't pay that $20, all right, and you don't pay anything on it, not only do you get hit with the interest rate, you get a late payment fee in addition to the interest rate for the next month. So you can't just ignore bills. You have to pay them. You have to pay them on time. So what happens if you go over your credit limit? So if you've never had a credit card, and most of you have not, if you swipe a credit card, let me back up, you get a credit card. You can't go buy a Lamborghini with it. Credit card companies, while they want you to be in debt, they also realize if you go rack up $3 million and you work 10 hours a week at McDonald's, you're never paying that back. So the credit card companies put a limit on it. It might be $500 when you get it. The most you can spend per month is $500. So a lot of times your card won't swipe after it's been maxed out, meaning you've hit that $500 limit. Sometimes they're like, all right, let it roll. And they'll let you spend $600. Even if you go to pay back that $600 that month, you get hit with a penalty for going over your limit, which would at that point is $500. Now, if you have credit cards for a long time and you keep paying them off, your limit keeps going up to where maybe you could one day buy a Ferrari with a credit card. You shouldn't. So if you go over your spending limit, you get hit with a fee there as well, even if you pay it off that month. Another thing about credit cards, cash advances. That's going to an ATM and taking money out. So credit cards are cool where they can track what you're spending your money on. They're real cool with that. You want to take cash out where they can't really track it? Not a huge fan of that. So to kind of encourage you not to do that, they have like rates for cash advance. So it could be like $5 to $10 in order to take cash out from a credit card. So if you take $100 out, you might have to, like when you get your bill at the end of the month, it might be $110 because there's a $10 cash advance fee associated with it. All right. So on top of all that with a credit card, there is also an annual fee associated with a credit card. It's basically like a membership to a credit card. You might have to pay $50 a year in order to use a MasterCard. So there might be a fee on top of it. Now, a lot of times, I see this all the time, that credit cards, if you have blah, 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 we'll waive your fee if you meet certain standards, you spend enough money and pay enough off, they'll waive your fee. That's very common, but generally speaking, credit cards have an annual fee that you have to pay in order to use their credit card. Even though waiving that fee is like one of the step one of like, hey, what special should we run? Like, no fees. So there is an annual fee associated with using credit cards. They do commonly get waived, but that is an additional expense you have to have every year in order to use the credit card. Now again, I should not understate, like why would anybody pay to use money you have to pay back? They give out a bunch of free stuff if you're really smart with your card and you pay it off. They're trying to get as many people to use their cards as possible, so the responsible people get all these benefits, all these frequent flyer miles, all these whatever, like cash back on purchases, all these things that more than pay for the fee of it. But the reason they do that is to get as many people as possible, because they know there's a lot of people who aren't going to be responsible. They're going to get stuck in a cycle of debt, and that's how the credit card companies are going to make money. So they do offer a lot of positives to get everybody in, knowing a good chunk of those people are going to get stuck in a vicious cycle of debt. Again, playing the fire a little bit with credit cards. But there are benefits to it. Again, we'll talk about it next unit. Another fee associated with credit cards is foreign transaction fees. And you're starting to see an ongoing issue in this unit about foreign transaction fees. If you spend money outside the country, it's an additional percentage added to however much you spent, purely because the banks have to do it, your currency exchange, there's a lot of extra steps. So you use a credit card outside of the country, there's going to be an additional markup on whatever you spent, whatever you get back. So the question here is, what are some of the penalties that credit cards impose if they're not used responsibly? So pause me. You don't have to. You can answer that correctly. That's what I got for you guys this unit. See y'all next unit.